All right, well, I don't even know if that's going to record very well or not, but anyway, try to record some of my lectures, maybe all of them, I don't know. I keep planning to get some of my lectures up on YouTube, open up my own YouTube channel, and still haven't found the time or the expertise to do stuff like that. So anyway, so welcome. Welcome to Environmental Ethics. Greetings from a common earthling. That's me, common earthling. Nobody special, no kind of special privileged knowledge, no access to the, to the meaning of life or anything like that. But I've taught this class many times, and I really enjoy teaching this class, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy that you're all here, and we have a lot to do today, so we're just going to get right to it. I'm actually working on a textbook on the subject of environmental ethics. My name is Vincent Mulier. The last name has that French pronunciation, and you can call me Professor Mulier. Most people just fall back on that as part of the college experience. It's just easier. So, but if you want to call me Vincent, that's fine too. I don't have much room. Anyway, and I've been teaching this class and teaching over here at PSU since I think the fall of 2008. So this is my 7th year, I think, something like that. And I've taught this class almost every term that I've been here because I wrote my doctoral thesis, and this is environmental ethics is my area, my passion, and my what we professional philosophers call my area of expertise, or even my area of specialization. I've read a lot in the field, and spent many years trying to comprehensively just trying to understand it all. And I have a ways to go, but you benefit from many years of experience, and your syllabus benefits from just a lot of tinkering that I've done, a lot of changing it, editing it. Every term I draft up a new syllabus. For a good couple years there, the syllabus largely remained the same. And then this past term, I changed it up dramatically, and now I'm kind of going back to largely the way, or partially the way it was before, but the written assignments are different. In the past, I've had students hand in one-page summaries of every reading. And I got that idea from my professor when I took social and political philosophy class as an undergraduate many years ago. That was one of his requirements, and I just remember learning more in that class and developing more as a thinker than any other time. Of course, I was very young then. My mind was very, very malleable. So I'm sure that that's a time when you feel like that at that time of your life, a lot, But anyway, I just remember really intensive learning experience by being forced to carefully read all the assignments and then summarize them. But I'm not asking you to do that. I'm only asking you to summarize 6. And rather than sticking to one page, I'm saying just to make it somewhere between 500 and 1,000 words. All right. So in other words, your workload is lighter than it has been historically for my environmental ethics class. The reading is all pretty difficult. If you're not accustomed to reading philosophy essays, then you're going to have to read each reading you're going to have to do 2 or 3 times, to really understand it. So it's kind of time-consuming, and it literally is true that what you've heard about from other professors, that you need at least 2 hours of outside time for every hour of in-class time that you put in. So we spend 4 hours a week in class, and so you really need 8 hours a week outside of class to master the readings and to do all the written work and prepare. We're kind of on a steep learning curve, and we're just charging full steam ahead, starting right now, because we have to prepare for our midterm, which is early. All right, we have a take-home midterm exam that I hand out at the end of week 3, Thursday of week 3, and then you'll do that, and that'll be your only written assignment for the next 10 days or so. You'll do that, and you'll hand it back into me. And so right now, and you're going to do 2 reading summaries before you get to that point. So you're going to summarize Aldo Leopold's famous essay, The Land Ethic, next week, and you're going to hand that in on Tuesday, I think. And then you're going to summarize Albert Schweitzer's Reverence for Life, the following. So you'll do 2 reading summaries, and but mainly you'll just pay close attention to lectures and try to develop an understanding of these various anthropocentric, all right? We're starting with human-centered theories about environmental ethics, okay? Or what we philosophers call anthropocentric, right? Human-centered. We start out with human-centered ethics, conservationist ethics, primarily. Whenever you hear the word conservationist, you should habitually think human-centered, okay? And you'll see why that is as we go along. We don't want to twist the meaning of conservationism so dramatically that it doesn't fit anymore with where it actually comes from. And where it comes from is a strongly human-centered tradition. All right? So we take care of the anthropocentric ways of thinking about natural resources in the first 3 weeks, then we take a midterm exam. All right? And then we kind of slow down a little bit, and then you basically have weekly reading summaries due. At least one per week until you have an essay due, and then you're done with the written stuff. And until you get to the final exam, there also is a final exam. All right, so anyway, so the title of my textbook is called Environmental Earth Ethics, so that's what this class is. This is a class, I quibble with the term environmental. It's too separating. It implies too much of a duality between us and the environment, right? As though we're not animals, as though we don't have habitats and physical needs and affect our world, right? It's ridiculous, obviously. So I discourage separations like that. And so I prefer, and then the word enlightenment, when I use that word in the title of my book, I mean a period of philosophy between basically 17th and 18th century European enlightened thinking, right? Enlightenment philosophy. And so part of what we do in this class is apply just a few giant towering figures in the German Enlightenment and the Scottish Enlightenment. In the Scottish Enlightenment, we think about David Hume and his contributions to constructing a foundation for environmental ethics. Right? Obviously, he wasn't aware that he was doing this, but other people have come along, have taken advantage of some of Hume's work and tried to construct, side by side with Darwin and Leopold, tried to construct an environmental ethic on Humean grounds. So David Hume was a 18th century the leading Scottish Enlightenment thinker, right? 1711 to 1776. So I'll refer to him quite a bit throughout the term, and I'll refer even more to Immanuel Kant throughout the term, who is the leading German Enlightenment thinker, roughly a contemporary of Hume, a little bit younger, 1724 to 1804. So about 13 years younger, but they were very aware of each other's works, and they quarreled with each other philosophically. And they still quarrel today. Their descendants, their philosophical descendants, still quarrel over the nature of value, over the nature of a moral judgment. All right, and we'll get into that dispute pretty heavily by going deeper into environmental ethics and questions about the nature of value. Okay, what is value, metaphysically, metaethically? So I hope you all read the syllabus carefully, because I just assume you're all honorable students, and you all want to succeed, and you all want to work hard, and you all want to get an education, because it's the most valuable thing you'll ever have in your whole life is your education, right? Nobody can ever take it away from you, and it just enriches. Every second of the rest of your life is enriched by what you do right here. And this is what people have been doing for thousands of years, all right? And it works, right? All this online stuff and self-education, sure, that's great, right? Trade school, business school, blah, 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 that's great. But the good old-fashioned liberal arts education is proven to be the most powerful engine of the development of human culture that the planet has ever seen. And you can see how culture just accelerated when people started getting together like this and reviewing each other's work and sharing a common objective of pursuing the true, the good, and the beautiful. Right? And that's what we're doing here. So this is a community. Attendance is extremely important, and I just ask that you all take yourselves and one another seriously, and take your professors seriously. I take myself probably too seriously with this class, because this is my passion. I care a lot about the way that certain places that I love are being treated, and certain animals that I'm aware of around the world that are having a really hard time. And I care about species, I care about biodiversity, I care about our oceans, I care about our climate. And so maybe I'm a little too serious in this class about all this stuff, but I would hope that you'd want all your professors to be as serious about the subject as I am about this subject. And so I just ask that you be respectful, okay, and take yourselves seriously as students, and just conduct yourselves like students, like the professional students that you are, right? This is a short period in your life where you get to do this, right? And there are very few invitations to do philosophy, right, to think about these subjects. So I ask that you just please be respectful, and that's it, right? And I'm just going to take you all you're all grown-ups, and I'm not going to lecture you about, about that sort of thing anymore, all right? So we have to hit the ground running because we do have a lot to do today. I sent out, everyone should have gotten at least 2 emails from me, okay? One of the emails contained had our syllabus, which I'll distribute hard copies of right now. And then the other email, I sent out all of my lecture notes, and some of you might have opened that file. Oh God, look at all these. It's ridiculous. And quite honestly, it is. I don't see how I'm going to get through all those lecture notes in 1 week, but I'll try. And so we have a lot to do today, and I'm not going to go over the syllabus because I just think it's self-explanatory. I get nitpicky, about some things in there, like attendance and stuff like that, and part of my job is making sure that my students have some discipline, and sometimes young people, I know a lot of you work too, a lot of you work full-time and are very, very busy, and I certainly admire you for going to school and working at the same time. But I would urge you to make time for your studies, okay? You need time. If you they made it back there, 2 more back there. Make time, if you don't have time, part of the college experience is just getting together and drinking a couple of pitchers of beer at the local tavern and talking about philosophy with your buddies, That's part of getting a college education. And if you don't have time to do that sort of thing, then you might, let alone, if you don't have time to put in your 8 hours a week on this class, let alone get together and drink a couple pitchers with your buddies and talk about environmental ethics, then I would just strongly urge you to find some way to make more time for yourself, all right? Because, although it's admirable to be working so hard and, trying to better yourself, it's also very important to relax during your education. And I encourage you to do that. Philosophy is meditative thinking, okay? It's not goal-oriented, task-oriented thinking. It's not just, okay, X, I check this off, get this done, right? No, it's not like that at all. It's meditative. It involves sinking deeply into thought, okay? So you need to have time for that. The learning curve is steep during the first 3 weeks of this course. It is. Mainly from what the feedback I get from students is that the terminology that we have to use in every ethics class, but probably a lot more so in an environmental ethics class, the terminology is a little bit overwhelming. It kind of swarms around you, these different words. I already used one of them, anthropocentric, and then we'll use another one, non-anthropocentric. And then we'll use words like, I don't. Anyway, so the learning curve is very steep during the first 3 weeks of the course, and then the course gets difficult. That's my little joke. You have to have some humor. So the take-home midterm exam will be handed out at the end of week 3, and the exam will ask you to apply. So this is what you need to do over the course of the next 3 weeks. You need to master what I have identified for you as 5 somewhat different, in some cases very different, but 5 different human-centered natural resource management traditions. Okay? You need to understand them and be able to apply them. All right? And I'm going to lay out for you 5 different stories, which are 5 different natural resource management topics. Okay? So when you come to the midterm exam, you'll be asked to apply, not all of them, and I'm not going to tell you which ones. Tradition X, Z, and W to management problem, or what I also identify as moral struggle, right? We have all these moral struggles over natural resources. Moral struggles over salmon restoration. Moral struggles over global anthropogenic climate destabilization. Moral struggles over clear cutting, right? These are all moral struggles. These are not just economic battles or the way people feel, people yelling at each other, and hippies over there and rednecks over there, loggers. No, these are all different ways of understanding the value of natural resources. And so we're going to dig into that. And you'll recognize the various different players in natural resource controversies as we move along here. You'll recognize the mainstream sort of resource extractive players. And then you'll start to recognize what you might call the tree huggers, et cetera, et cetera. As we go on through the term, we won't really get into the tree huggers until week 4. Week 4 and week 5. The first 3 weeks, we're just going to stay close to kind of mainstream Western resource management, all right? And then we're going to deviate from it only to a certain extent in the direction of resource conservation preservation. But conservationism remains an anthropocentric philosophy, all right? As you will hopefully come to understand more fully at the end of today's lecture. So that's what the exam will look like. I just wanted to share with you right off the bat. All right, these are the 5 traditions that we'll cover in the next 3 weeks, right? Good old familiar what I asked you to read for today. Those chapters from Pinchot's book about conservationism. I forget what that book is about. Anyway, it's this book that he wrote. And he's not a philosopher, but he studied utilitarianism in college, and he transformed utilitarianism into a natural resource management philosophy. And he probably belongs in the pantheon of great North American environmentalists, right? In some important sense. Not all the way, and I'm very suspicious of, he's a little too establishment. But they got a national forest named after him. The largest one in the whole system, actually, is Gifford Pinchot National Forest. Pretty famous guy. And he is the founder of classical American conservationism, or what I also sometimes call Pinchotian conservationism, and what Leopold, in what we'll read for next week, what he would call Group A conservationism. Okay, these terms are all interchangeable for the purposes of this class. Economic reductionism, you'll learn about that from reading William Baxter's essay, coming right up on Thursday. You'll read that over before next class, and you'll also learn about wise use from Ron Arnold's essay. So I've asked you to read both Ron Arnold, very short, very easy essay from Ron Arnold, and then also a short, somewhat more difficult essay from William Baxter. But they're both quite short, and I'm not asking you to summarize them or anything like that. Just please read them carefully. And then a couple other, definitely more resource conservationist, these guys sound a lot more like what we think of when we think of environmentalists. The holistic conservationists, and then what I identify as the biophilic conservationists through this guy named E.O. Wilson. All right, so that's what I hope you guys master, that theoretical part of our course. That's what I want you to master over the next 3 weeks. All right, and then these topics. All right, and I'll spend a little bit of time. Hopefully, I'll have time today to talk a little bit about the controversy over the moral struggle. I like that term. The moral struggle over Hetch Hetchy Valley in Yosemite. The first great battle between environmentalists and developers in North America, right? Near the beginning of the 1900s. And then, well, that's one story that I want you guys to be familiar with, because I might ask you to apply 1 or 2 or 3 of those other traditions from the previous slide to this story, to the moral struggle, right? Because of all of these different traditions have different answers, different ways of resolving the moral struggle. These various moral struggles. These are all different moral struggles, right? Different events. Some of them are ongoing. The bottom 3 are all still ongoing, except thylacines are extinct. And we'll talk a little bit about that. That's one of my favorite animals. I just love those. They're the Tasmanian tigers, is the more common term. Anyway, we'll talk about thylacines a little bit when we talk about Leopold, because Leopold's all about wolves. All right, we'll do our big wolf. We'll talk about wolves next Tuesday when we read Leopold. All right, and a little bit about cougars, because it's really about predators, predator eradication, which although Leopold championed for a short time in his young career, and later came to regret, and wrote a very eloquent short little essay called "Thinking Like a Mountain." And that was his official public mea culpa for having spearheaded the Forest Service's predator eradication program for many years, actually. He came to realize that it was morally not sound to remove predators from the landscape, because it just causes all kinds of problems all over the place. Everything basically falls apart. Our home, our oikos, falls apart. Oikos is home, by the way. That's the Greek word for home, oikos, right? Look it up in Wikipedia. It's fascinating, the oikos, the Greek oikos, how they lived, how their house was built, how it was set up, and how their different quarters that they had. It's really fascinating. They had a very ritualized kind of daily life. If they were of a certain, middle or upper class, people had, customs. Anyway, but oikos is where we get both our word economy. Economy is oikos nomos, right? Which is the rules. Nomos is rules or laws, right? Economics is the rules of the home. And then ecology is the study of the home, right? Oikosology, study of the home. So really, oikosology comes before oikos nomos, right? Because you can't have any rules. You can't set up rules until you understand what your home is, right? How it works, how the climate systems work, how the ocean systems work, all this stuff, how the forest, all of it, how it works, right? So you can't set up rules, right? So we went way ahead of ourselves. Our culture did, jumped way ahead. And now we say, well, the ecology has to take a back seat to the economy, right? The rules need to take a back seat to the understanding, which is ridiculous and crazy, right? That's how a crazy person thinks, right? I have these rules. I don't care about understanding. Anyway, so somehow our culture needs to go back, and that's what's been happening. That's the ecology and biology become the adopted parents of morality, because we come to see through our understanding of ecology and biology, the 20th century sciences, and of course, evolution through anthropology, right? Studying ourselves and where we came from. We come to understand how all of these things are interconnected, and we come to conduct ourselves with a greater awareness, right? Perhaps more ethically, you could say, as we come to understand our oikos. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about each of these subjects over the next 3 weeks. So by the end of week 3, you'll have 5 different stories, and you'll have 5 different traditions. And then it's going to be mix and match on the midterm exam. Okay, and it's going to be take home, open book, open notes, open lecture notes, everything, right? All right, and then these are the 6 works that I've asked you. So they're all essays except for the last one, which is just, you're going to read both the essays. Both of our deep ecology essays are pretty short for that week. I think that's week 8. We do Thomas Birch, week 7, then we do deep ecology, then we do social ecology, then we do ecofeminism, and then we close off with environmental virtue ethics. Okay? We kind of squeeze that in right at the end. And so by the time the final exam comes around, we'll actually have, as you can see on the last page of the syllabus, we'll actually have covered 9 different, distinct, identifiable environmental ethics traditions. What could loosely be called, some of these, wow, that's not really environmental ethics, that's just how to use up the earth. But the way I teach this class, everyone has an environmental ethic, right? Environmental ethics is not a subject for tree huggers. Disabuse yourself of that whole idea of associating, forget that I have long hair because I can't afford a haircut, all right? But, don't try to, this is philosophy, all right? So don't go around thinking that environmental ethics is some kind of exotic thing that, that means preserving the environment. Actually, there is an ethic, too, behind the philosophy that says use up, exploit, extract, frack, drill, right? Those guys have an environmental ethic, too, and we need to start thinking about what their environmental ethic is, right? So we're trying to reconstruct the moral dimensions of our relationships with non-human entities, right? With animals, with other animals, with plants, with trees, with forests, with species, with ecosystems, with the earth as a whole, climate systems, all that stuff, right? What are the moral dimensions? We know we have more moral dimensions of our relationships with one another, right? We do, right? There's no question, obviously. You belong in jail if you don't recognize that simple fact. We have moral obligations to one another, because we're all humans, right? But this class asked what 40 or 50 years ago would have been a very odd question, but now is just, taken as a very serious question. We need to figure this out. What are the moral dimensions of our relationships with non-human, right? And there probably will be a range of different kinds of obligations that we have. But it's much easier, for example, to see that we have obligations to, for example, a sentient individual animal, right? Can't kick the dog, you have to treat the dog well, have to feed the dog properly, have to keep the dog warm, et cetera, et cetera. But what about an obligation to a tree? Okay, well, you could go a little farther, and actually a lot of science is showing that trees are sentient in a sense, right? These trees have a certain sentience too, so, okay. But what about an ecosystem? Is there anything there to have moral obligations to an ecosystem? That's when we start, getting into some really challenging territory, or obligations to the earth as a whole. How could that be? So anyway, I write my course summary with, some of these questions in mind. I try to bring these out in my course summary. So I hope everyone reads my syllabus very carefully, because there are certain things in there that, I'm going to expect you to know, even though I didn't read them out carefully on the first day of class, because we just don't have time. All right, we're going to hit the ground running, like I said. All right, so those are the 6 writings I'm going to ask you to summarize. And they're all spaced out. You can see, starting on February 4th, you just have one due every Thursday. That's it. February 4th is a Thursday. But the first 2 are due on Tuesdays. Okay, so the Leopold summary will be due next Tuesday, and then the Schweitzer summary will be due the following Tuesday. All right, so there are a million different ways of defining and describing philosophy. Criticism of criticism, judgment of judgment, thinking the thought that thinks itself. You know, we're trying to understand experience, and since so much of experience proceeds through conceptual structures, then we have to try to make sense, we have to analyze those conceptual structures in order to make sense of our experience. So Isaiah Berlin, this very prominent English social and political philosopher, I just thought he had some good explanations. He made a good effort, a laudable effort to try to define for a lay person what philosophy is all about. And he says that philosophy concerns itself with questions such that not only are the answers not known, but neither are the means for arriving at an answer or the standards of judgment by which to evaluate whether a suggested answer is plausible or implausible. So philosophy is concerned with questions that arise from people's attempts to make sense of their experience. All right? So it involves consideration of the concepts and categories through which experience is perceived, organized, and explained. All right? And then down at the bottom, so philosophy involves the study of these thought spectacles through which we view the world. And since at least some of these categories change over time, at least some philosophy is necessarily historical. So we need to keep redoing philosophy. And it's true that we keep returning to the same questions. We're still disputing the same questions that Socrates and Plato and their contemporaries were disputing in 300-400 before the Common Era, right? Philosophy basically is about 2,400 years old, right? It dates from about 400, when Socrates was in his prime and doing his teaching, to today, 400 before the Common Era. So that's about 2,400 years, if I'm counting right. Socrates, of course, was charged with corrupting the youth. And all of Western philosophy really comes out. I mean, if you want to have a founding father of philosophy, then probably it would have to be Socrates. And Socrates, of course, was martyred. He was executed by the state for corrupting the youth. Basically, what he was accused of was teaching that every human being has access to the true, the good, and the beautiful without any appeal to state authority or religion or the gods. And that mere thought was challenging and threatening to the state. So they said, well, you can do two things. You can exile yourself and just leave forever, or you can die. And he chose to drink the hemlock and die. He was 70 years old. And anyway, that's kind of a short history of philosophy, obviously. There's a lot more to it. But it's a big thing. Philosophy is really heavy duty, very important. It's a lot older than all the social sciences. The social sciences are just babies, little tiny infants compared to philosophy. And philosophy is the oldest form of knowledge that we know of. And it's extremely important. So don't confuse, by the way, don't confuse ethics or moral reasoning. I'm going to use all these, like moral philosophy and ethics, I use those terms interchangeably. Moral reasoning probably could also be called ethics. Our task in this class is to examine and refine our moral compasses. So don't confuse moral considerations with prudential considerations, all right? What's practical. These two kinds of reasoning are distinct, all right? Moral reasoning might sometimes include practical or prudential reasoning, but sometimes the morally right course of action or the morally right set of character traits is imprudent, okay? So they're not always the same. And it's very important to remember that. One cannot refute a normative conclusion. A normative conclusion just means a moral judgment. A statement that contains the word ought or the word should. And other key words will tip you off that a normative claim is being made. That's a non-empirical claim, right? A normative claim is a non-empirical claim. It's a claim about what ought to be the case. And you'll find yourself making these normative claims from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep every single day, and even in your dreams. You're making normative claims constantly. And in ethics class, this is an ethics class, right? It's an applied ethics class. In ethics class, what we try to do is we try to bracket out the facts and focus in on the values and the judgments, right? The moralities, the ethics. Whereas in a science, you do the exact opposite, right? In science, you bracket out all the value judgments, all the value claims, you bracket them, set them totally aside, and you just focus on what is, right? It's one way to think about what we're doing in an ethics class. All right, and you may be skeptical that there's anything to study there, right? But there is. There are objective features of moral reasoning that we can understand the same way that physicists go around trying to understand the objective features of matter, right? There are objective features of moral reasoning. And you'll see it's very complex, and it takes years to master. But we are studying something real. We're not just, wishy-washy people, doing artsy-fartsy stuff, right? We're studying something real, and there are structures that we're going to just uncover as we go through the term. Structures of moral reasoning. So prudential reasoning about issues in natural resource management often calls on economics. And typically that's how natural resource management questions are debated in the media, between friends and stuff like that. Typically we do tend to focus on economics. Be careful though, okay? Philosophy is not a social science. Do not make the mistake of confusing, or heaven forbid, reducing environmental ethics to economics, okay? We're doing something much broader, much bigger, much more important than economics. Do not confuse ethical issues with economic issues. If you persist in confusing ethical issues with economic issues, you will fail to understand what this course is about. And please, just in general, in a philosophy class, you must strive to break the habit of letting practical outcomes drive your thinking, all right? There are a lot more reasons to think a certain thought than outcome. There are a lot more reasons to call a thought true, or to call a value judgment true, than outcome, all right? This is not about outcome in a philosophy class. We are conditioned to think about outcome because we live in a very science-heavy culture. But there are a lot more measurements of the true, the good, and the beautiful than outcome or consequence. All right, so just real quickly, 3 main branches of ethics or moral philosophy. And we're going to do each of these 3 throughout the term. We're going to be doing a lot of meta-ethics. All these axiological questions that I'm going to introduce you are the main, the essential axiological question that I'm going to introduce you to momentarily is heavy-duty meta-ethics. What has moral status in the universe? What beings or entities have direct, independent moral status? What's the most popular answer to that question? Humans. Period. If you ask anybody in the world, you ask them that, the most common answer you'll get is humans. What has direct, independent moral status? So now we're going to start to think about how on earth could a non-human have direct, indirect is fine. Like Kant said, it's morally wrong to kick your dog. Or he said it's morally wrong even to send your horse after he's finished his life of labor to be slaughtered. He said, no, you need to retire that horse to the pasture because that horse has served you well. But he didn't think the horse or the dog or any other non-human animal had any direct moral status. Nah. Only humans, right? Because only humans are rational and autonomous, right, for Kant. So humans are number 1, right, for Kant. And everything else is just property, basically. But Kant did recognize that kicking the dog or abusing your horse reflects poorly on the character and the humanity of the person who does that. And so it was immoral to do that. So it's immoral to kick your dog. The dog has indirect moral status, right? Only you have direct, independent moral status. The dog is kind of a reflection of you. That's it, right? So anyway, but now we're asking, well, maybe Kant was wrong. Do other entities, the dog, the crow, the species, the orca, the pod of orcas, the genetic lineage, the ecosystem, the